Hello everyone. This is the 41 part of the story, I'm Vōldēmōrt. Chapter 248 Revenge, Part 2. I'm sorry, do I know you? Lady Sif asked the black-haired woman, who merely sneered in her direction and kept walking in the opposite direction. Shrugging it off, Sif kept on her way and soon arrived in the dining hall, where she met Tom, who was already eating peacefully. Taking the seat beside him, the maids brought over Sif's breakfast of choice and retreated to the corner of the room. When can I expect to see the results of our nighttime excursion? Sif asks as she elegantly ate her breakfast. Soon, I'm sure. Tom answers, and the two enjoy their breakfast in silence. As they were finishing up, Queen Frigga came storming in with a worried expression on her face. Tom, do you have a moment? She asks, but Tom knows she wasn't giving him a choice. Wiping his mouth with a napkin, Tom stands and follows her out of the dining hall and to an empty room. It was you, right? She asks as soon as they're alone. Me? Tom pretends to be oblivious. Yes, don't play dumb. It was you that turned my son into a daughter, correct? The Queen asks, knowing it has to be her new student's work. When Frigga spotted her new daughter, she knew it was Loki instantly. Even as a different gender, good parents can always recognize their children. The problem is that Loki has no idea of his sudden change. In fact, he somehow still sees himself as a man. Frigga has been trying for the past hour to turn him back, but nothing seems to do the job. I don't know what you're talking about, but if it were me, then this would be a well-deserved punishment. Tom says cryptically, announcing that it was him. If it were you, then what would make you do such a thing? She asks back, wondering what Loki has done. He would have to dump me in an unsuspecting woman's bed in my sleep and then call the guards on me. Tom reveals, and Frigga's eyebrows immediately scrunch up. On one hand, she doesn't want her son to be humiliated as he is now. On the other hand, it sounds like he deserves what's happening to him. Hypothetically speaking, how long would this last? She asks, hoping to come to a middle ground that can resolve this situation. If it were me, I could make something like this last a very long time. Tom says with an innocent smile. You have until the end of the day to turn him back. You can have your fun until then, but if my son wakes up a woman tomorrow, there will be problems. She cuts through the bullshit and gave Tom a time limit. Many would see this as a threat, but really Frigga is protecting her student. When Odin hears of this, he will have to investigate, and nothing can stay hidden for long. She's pretty much saying that she'll distract Odin for the day so Tom can have his fun, but after that, he needs to clean up his own mess. I'm sure the perpetrator of this heinous act would gladly agree to that. Tom says with a shrug. Soon, Lady Sif and many others in the place found out exactly who the new beauty in the palace was. Sif laughed for hours after finally realizing the woman she bumped into earlier in the day was Loki Odinson, or rather Odin's daughter now. Of course, after a while of being oblivious, Loki found out as well and swiftly proceeded to go into hiding. That night, Tom started up late waiting for the arrival of his guest. Soon, the window opened and the beautiful Loki Odin's daughter came climbing into the room. Hello, Loki. Tom says casually from his seat. What brings you here so late in the night? I told you I'm not gay, so I'm not interested in sharing my bed with you. Although, you are a woman now. Chills run down Loki's spine at the mere thought of what Tom is implying. You've gone too far. Loki yells in fury. I wouldn't be shouting if I were you. Someone may find out that an Asgardian princess such as yourself is sneaking into a lowly Midgardian peasant's bedroom. Oh, the rumors that would spread. Tom says with a vicious smirk. Shutting her mouth, Loki glares daggers into Tom's figure. Good. Now, I believe you're the one that took things too far. This is only retaliation for what you started. Dropping me in Sif's room and calling the guards, really? Tom says with a quirked eyebrow. Although Loki's prank may not seem so bad at first glance, Tom could have been charged with some sort of sexual assault or maybe even rape, depending on how the situation played out. I don't know what you're talking about. Loki puts on an innocent act. Then I don't know how to turn you back into a man. Tom says and simply waits for Loki to break. After a moment of tense silence, Loki sighs and admits his actions. Fine. I went too far. Turn me back and we'll call it even. Loki says defeatedly. All right, but before that, we need to come up with some ground rules for our little war. We can't have things like this happening again after all. Chapter 249, First Lesson. After their late-night conversation, Tom and Loki came to a sort of gentleman's agreement. They agreed to keep the prank war to pranks that won't kill, maim, cripple, cause criminal charges, ruin public opinion, or any other number of unfavorable outcomes. All right, I agree. Now change me back into a man. Loki demands angrily. Are you sure? You look quite nice the way you are. Tom asks as he gestures to Loki's massive boobs. Feeling the urge to cover his chest, Loki does so and glares at Tom with annoyance clear in his stare. No, I want to be changed back this instant. Loki exclaims in a hushed voice as he doesn't want someone to come in and misunderstand what's happening. All right. Tom says with a shrug as he pulls out a vial with an orange-looking viscous liquid inside. This should do the job. Should? Loki doesn't like the sound of that. Yeah, it will either turn you back into a man or some breed of small dog, maybe? Tom says with an unsure tilt of his head. What? Loki yells loudly for real this time. Hee, just kidding. Tom laughs and throws over the potion vial. Loki's eyes go wide as he carefully catches the vial, so it doesn't land and breaks on the hard marble floor. If I'm still a woman in the morning, no, let me rephrase that. If I'm not back to normal by the morning, this agreement we came to will be null and void. I will use the most forbidden magic to make your life hell. Loki says with the orange potion clasped in his hand as he leaves the room without another word. The next day, Loki was back to normal and Frigga thanked Tom for keeping his word during their first lesson together. That's right, Tom was called for his first lesson with Frigga and it was pretty boring as most first lessons are. She gave him a stack of books that needed to be read along with a lecture on Asgardian magic. There are 3 types of magic used on Asgard. First, we have things like Thor's thunder. He was born with this power and can instinctively use it with Mjolnir's help, but that's just because he never practices. Something that I believe you've fixed, haven't you? Frigga asks with a smile on her face. Recently, her more hard-headed and fight-loving son has been practicing his thunder diligently every morning, which was a big shock when she found out. Yeah, I told him that he's weak for relying on a hammer for his lightning and I wouldn't fight him again until he can control it himself. Tom says and receives a happy smile from Frigga. Thank you, I've been trying to motivate him to practice for a while now, but all he's ever cared about was fighting. I know for a fact that Odin is very thankful to you for this. She says. Well, tell the old man that I said you're welcome. Tom says with a shrug. With that out of the way, Frigga continued her lecture with a thankful smile. The second version is similar to your mystic arts taught in Kamartaj back on Midgard. This is what Loki and I practice, as we weren't lucky enough to be born with a special power like Thor. This magic is far more versatile than what anyone can be born with, but it takes hard work and dedication to master. Frigga says as she showcased some of her skills. Suddenly, Tom and Frigga appeared in the dark vacuum of space. They were both floating next to one another, admiring the view around them. Soon, they appeared back in the small library, sitting at a table with Tom's stack of books that he has to study. Was that an illusion? Tom asks as he wasn't sure. He could breathe just fine and he didn't feel like he was in the cold vacuum of space, yet everything looked so real. This is coming from someone who has studied illusions and can usually tell when he's the subject of one. Maybe? Frigga says with a smirk on her face. Tom knew she wouldn't answer his question, so he simply shrugged and let it go. He'll learn sooner or later. Now, the last form of magic we have on Asgard is our technology. This is something my husband and I are very proud of. Asgardian technology is so advanced that it's seen as a form of magic. Even many of the Asgardian citizens see it this way as well. Of course, it goes without saying that we won't be sharing our technology with you. Though, if the Ancient One is willing to trade, we may consider it. Frigga says, wanting to get her hands on the magic behind the portals they use. I'll ask her what she's willing to trade and we'll see what she says. Tom shrugs as he doesn't really care about their tech. He wants to start learning their magic before he worries about technology. There will be plenty of alien tech to scavenge in the future after all. Chapter 250, God of Wind? After giving her explanation, Frigga told Tom to follow her and lead him out of the room and down the hall. Where are we going? Tom asked as she didn't say. To test whether you were born with a power similar to Thor's or not. Frigga says as she continues to lead Tom down the hall and to a room with a baby's crib covered in runes and glyphs. Frigga believes that the wizards of Midgard are descended from Asgardians that visited all those years ago, so it would make sense that they may have powers similar to that of Asgardians. This is why she wants to test Tom and see if the crib would even work on him at all. The crib is made to only work on those of Asgardian descent, so if it does work, then it will prove that wizards are in fact part Asgardian. Wouldn't I have noticed if I were born with a power other than the magic I already have? Tom asked as he looked around the room curiously. What's this crib for? This is the crib used to test royal children. When Thor was placed in this crib on the day he was born, the skies immediately clouded and thunder boomed for days. Frigga says with a nostalgic smile on her face. As for your other question, it's not that simple. The crib unlocks the power within you and brings it into the world around us. On the other hand, you could have no power at all, similar to Loki and I. In that case, a certain rune on the crib would glow red, indicating exactly that. How do normal people do this? Does every Asgardian family have a special crib? Tom asked doubtfully. No, in order to access something like this you have to either be a member of a noble family or enter into the army. If everyone had the opportunity to unlock their power, Asgard would be a lot more chaotic than it already is. Frigga explained. Alright, so what should I do? Want me to climb in? I may break it though. Tom says as he eyes the crib before him. Hearing her student's idiotic words, Frigga rolled her eyes at him. No, simply place a hand in the crib and it will do the work. She says and Tom walks to the crib and reaches in with a single hand. The second Tom's hand entered the crib and touched the bottom, the runes on the crib lit up as the weather outside began to change. The wind picked up all around Asgard as small tornadoes appeared everywhere. Citizens everywhere started rushing inside to wait out the storm. Vendors packed up their wares in a hurry and carted them off to store away from any possible damage. Soon, the streets of Asgard were cleared except for the winds and small tornadoes rushing around all over the place. Back in the room with the royal crib, Tom has begun to float off the ground as the wind around him caressed his body, pushing him upwards. I was right. Frigga mutters as she watches Tom prove her theory correct. Meanwhile, the second Tom's hand entered the crib, he entered a sort of trance. When that trance was broken and his consciousness returned, Tom found himself floating at least 8 feet off the ground with wind rushing and hugging around his body. Huh? Tom grunted as the wind disappeared and he fell straight down to the hard marble floor. Bang! Standing up and brushing himself off, Tom peeked out the window and saw tornadoes forming all over Asgard. He could also hear the loud whistling of the wind as it rushed all around Asgard. Suddenly, the door was slammed open and in came Odin with an alarmed expression. What's happening? Odin's voice booms over the loud winds outside. I proved our theory to be correct, Frigga says as she points between the crib and Tom, who is still watching the tornadoes outside with a familiar feeling in his chest. He feels a connection to the winds and tornadoes raging outside. Teach the boy to rein this in then. When it's a baby doing this, it's understandable and excusable, but he should be able to fix this, Odin orders as he motions towards the tornadoes outside, which seem to be growing bigger and bigger with each passing moment. After telling his wife what to do, Odin rushed off to calm his people as many of them were frightened by the sudden change in weather. Tom, you heard him. Try reining in the winds and disperse the tornadoes, Frigga says as Tom closed his eyes and tries to do as she said. Soon, his mind calms and with it, the wind outside does as well. After a few minutes, the winds returned to normal and the tornadoes began to shrink until not a single one remained. Chapter 251 Earthly Matters. While Tom was learning of his and the rest of the wizarding world's relation to Asgard, the sorcerers of Kamar-Taj were under attack. The sorcerers that never showed up to the meeting Tom called when the Dormammu scare first started have turned into mindless ones. They've been robbing key artifacts from museums and even staged a few assaults on the sanctums all around the world. Of course, thanks to Tom and the Ancient One's plans, these sanctums were filled with trusted masters from around the world, so nothing was stolen from them at least. The masters that were summoned by Tom never returned to their normal lives. Some, like the ones that defended against these attacks, have been put on guard duty in key places around the world, while others are still rooming in Kamar-Taj. The ones in Kamar-Taj are a sort of military reserve. They are pretty much on standby, waiting for the call to head out and either help defend a location or attack an enemy location. Sadly, the location of where these mindless ones are staying hasn't been found. Luckily, the defending forces stationed at each sanctum have slowly but surely started whittling down the enemy forces' numbers. The Ancient One is always at the head of each battle. Since every sanctum is just a portal away, she and other key members of Kamar-Taj have been backing up the defending master when needed. At first, the Ancient One thought to call Tom back in order to have him at the ready, but just a few mindless ones haven't been hard to deal with. She knew Tom was excited to visit and learn in Asgard, so she decided to wait and only call him when his assistance is needed or if Dormammu were to appear. Not that she doesn't already have a plan in place for if that were to happen. She has seen the future and knows how Doctor Strange would beat Dormammu after all. The problem comes with these artifacts being stolen from museums and other people's personal collections. The Ancient One has tried her best over the many years she's been Sorceress Supreme to collect and safe keep as many magical artifacts as possible, but no matter how much she tries, some artifacts will always slip through the cracks. It doesn't take a genius to know what these stolen artifacts are being stolen for. They'll be used to open some sort of gateway or connection to the dark dimension, which Dormammu would use to swallow up the earth or whatever he has planned. The question is, would these stolen artifacts be enough? If it's not enough, the mindless ones will stage another heist, but if they can't find anything, an attack on whichever sanctum they find interesting is most likely to happen. Without the easy pickings lying around, the only other places to get artifacts are the sanctums and Kamar-Taj itself. While the Ancient One was thinking this, a lone disciple came barreling into her office with a worried expression on his face. Apologies, Ancient One, but the New York sanctum is under attack again. The disciple exclaimed. It seems no other artifacts are laying around. The Ancient One muttered as she stood from her chair. Let's see what they have to offer this time. Waving her hand, the bald sorceress supreme opens a portal and steps through to see the entrance hall of the New York Sanctum. On one side of the room stood the composed masters of Kamar-Taj, guarding and defending the sanctum. On the other side near the entrance were the mindless ones, each of them with the black rings around their eyes. They looked similar to Caecilius from the movie when he turned into a mindless one. The battle between them seemed to freeze as a portal opened in between the two warring sides. As the portal fully opened, the Ancient One stepped out without a single care in the world. Oh, your numbers have grown since our last encounter. The Ancient One comments as the portal closes behind her. Eyeing each and every mindless one up and down, she saw that there were about triple the amount that escaped their last battle, which is surprising as none of their forces have defected. Where are they getting these people from? She thought as she scanned the crowd. Her brow raised as soon as she saw the small sticks held tightly in many of the mindless ones' hands. Wizards? She questioned. Thinking it over, it makes sense that they would recruit from the wizarding population. There aren't many mystic arts masters that aren't already a part of Kamar-Taj, so it's best to look for recruits from other places. The wizarding world seems to be the place that holds the most potential recruits on Earth. Sighing to herself, the Ancient One knew that this may turn into an annoying situation. Since they've dragged the wizards into this, should I call Tom back? They are his people after all. Chapter 252 Returning. Before the Ancient One even had a chance to send a message to Tom, informing him of the involvement of the wizards in their fight against Dormammu, Tom received a message from his followers. At the time Tom was sitting in his room in Asgard, accustoming himself to his new wind-controlling powers. He would just sit there and control the wind around him to dance along his hands and between his fingers. The process was fairly easy compared to Thor, who has almost zero control of his lightning without the help of his hammer. Since Tom has been practicing with controlling energy for a long time now, he thinks that it's easier for him because he's so practiced already. Whether it be the magical energy he was born with or the many energies he had to learn to control in Kamar-Taj, Tom has experience molding and using energy. As he was about to go to sleep, Tom received a message from multiple followers, informing him of attacks on his people. Hearing the specifics, Tom found out that these attackers are targeting Lord Black's campaign and all of his followers working on that campaign. Sighing in annoyance, Tom left his room and went looking for either the king or queen of Asgard. He could leave at any time with a portal, but it would be best to at least let his hosts know that he'll be leaving to sort out some personal business. Working his way through the palace, Tom arrived in front of the doors leading to the royal wing of the place, where the Asgardian royal family lives. As Tom arrived, the many guards stationed outside the double entrance doors barred him from getting anywhere near the door, let alone get past it. Though Tom could easily force his way through, he's a guest here, so he needs to be respectful in his actions. Halt, show your identification immediately. The main guard in his shining armor ordered assertively. Taking out the medal that Frigga had given him, Tom showcases it to the guards. I'm Tom, Queen Frigga's new student. Can you inform her that I need to speak with her for a moment? Tom asked as the guards studied his identification. After a brief moment of silence, while the guards eyed him and his medal with the utmost scrutiny, the main guard nodded his head and spoke up once again. Wait here. He says as he turns around and enters the double's doors behind him. After a few minutes of waiting, the main guard returned and invited Tom into the royal wing. Contrary to popular belief here on Asgard, the royal wing of the palace isn't entirely made of gold or bejeweled in the most expensive of diamonds and other rare gems. The place looked rather plain and reminded Tom of normal family homes back on Earth. Of course, normal family homes on Earth aren't nearly this big, but Tom still gets that feeling. There are family pictures along the walls, and not just portraits of past rulers and their wives found in every monarchy. The wing has actual wholesome-looking family pictures. Tom even gave a small chuckle when he saw a picture of Thor and Loki when they were very young. Somewhere in the single digits at least. Thor was wielding a wooden sword with pride and accomplishment written all over his face, while Loki was off to the side with the most pretentious scowl Tom has ever seen. I see you've taken interest in my family pictures. Frigga appears and shoos away the guard, leaving Tom and her alone. What do you need, Tom? It encapsulates both of your children's personalities perfectly. Tom says, referring to the picture. I'm going to be leaving for a bit. There's been an attack on my people back on Midgard. Huh? Kamar-Taj is under attack? We'll send some forces out with you to assist. We are allies after all. Frigga says, ready to fulfill Asgard's duty as an ally. No, not Kamar-Taj. Tom says with a shake of his head. I have my own people in the wizarding world. They've been encountering attacks and informed me just a moment ago. You don't need to send people. I can take care of it myself. I just wanted to let you know that I'll be gone until this problem is settled. As Frigga was about to nod and wish Tom luck, heavy footsteps could be heard from down the hall as Thor comes rushing over to his mother's side. Did you say there was an attack on your people? Thor asked excitedly. As your good friend, I Thor Odinson will accompany you to Midgard and fight beside you to dispatch these enemies. As Tom was about to turn him down, Frigga beat him to the punch. That would be perfect. Even though we aren't allies with the wizarding world, as you call it, that doesn't mean we shouldn't give assistance to our friends, she says and turns to Thor. Why don't you go and pack for your trip while I speak with Tom? Thor didn't need to be told twice as he sprinted away to pack for the battle on Midgard. Tom simply stared at Frigga with a look that said what the fuck? Sorry, but Thor has been looking for any excuse to leave Asgard and fight something. If he stays here any longer, he'll end up challenging a large portion of the army to a battle again. Frigga says with a visible look of annoyance. The last time that happened, half of the city was destroyed and I had to spend an entire week fixing it with magic. So, your fix to that is offloading your battle-hungry son on me? Tom asked with an annoyed sigh. Yes. Frigga nods with a smile on her face. Fine, but you owe me one. This marks the end of part 41 of the story, I'm Vōldēmōrt. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe the video to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.